Hello, in this video, we're going to make relatively healthy and very tasty banana peanut butter oatmeal bars. The main ingredients I've already said, bananas, peanut butter, and oats. Whole oats or quick oats would work. Whole old-fashioned oats are probably better, but quick oats will work. You just don't want instant oats for this recipe. Here's the recipe. So if you want to make this right now, then you'll want to gather 3 medium bananas or the equivalent. 3 medium bananas mashed makes about a cup of banana. So if you have 2 pretty large bananas, or you might need more if you have small bananas, you'll need a cup of peanut butter. Or if you don't want to use peanut butter, you can use a different nut butter or a seed butter if you have nut allergies. And then a 1/4 cup of some liquid sweetener like honey, maple syrup, or molasses. Cinnamon, it's optional, but it really does help to boost the flavor. Same goes for vanilla. Optional, but it helps with the flavor. And then 2 cups of whole or quick oats and a cup of what I would call add-ins. So some chopped nuts or some seeds. I'm going to use chocolate chips because I want to be indulgent. And then you'll need an oven, conventional or toaster, to bake at 350, a 9 by 9 inch baking pan or something similar in size, and then either oil or shortening to grease the pan, or you can use parchment paper, which might be especially helpful if you have a metal pan or if you know that your oven tends to get hot. A bowl for mixing, and then the mixing spoon and spatula and things like that. Potentially an electric mixer, but it's not necessary. You can do it by hand. And that should be all that you need. So the first ingredient is the bananas. I have mashed mine by hand ahead of time because I'm going to actually just mix everything by hand. If you're using an electric mixer, you wouldn't necessarily need to do this. I mash them ahead of time, even if I use the electric mixer, because I just wanted to make sure that I have enough. My bananas looked a little bit small, and I have a little more than a cup mashed here, but that's okay. And I don't mash it down completely. I like to leave a little bit of chunkiness to the bananas. So in that case, I expect to get a little more than a cup, but if you mash it down really smooth, like you might give it to a baby who doesn't have any teeth yet, then you probably should have at least a cup of completely mashed banana. You could also run it through a blender if you really wanted to, but I'd just go ahead and mash it right in my measuring cup. So you can see that I've left my banana chunky, more like a stage, maybe 2 or 3 baby food, which is why I had probably about 1 1/4 cups of banana instead of a single cup. If you're skeptical about the cinnamon, I promise you that it tastes really good, and you might be pleasantly surprised unless you just really don't like cinnamon. Everyone I've shared these with has commented on how good they taste, and they wonder sometimes what's in it, or they'll notice the cinnamon and be surprised by it in a good way. So I suggest trying it, although you can leave it out if you're a little too skeptical or don't care for cinnamon. So this is what it looks like now that all of the liquid ingredients and the cinnamon have been mixed together. Still a bit chunky, though you could make it perfectly pureed if you'd like, if you make sure that the banana is fully mashed, either with the mixer or a blender or by hand. And now we're ready to add in the oats and the chocolate chips. So I've added my oats and my chocolate chips all at once, and I'm just going to stir until everything is mixed together well and the oats and the chips are coated by the peanut butter. So here's what it looks like. It's a very wet mixture, but it's sticking together. It'll fall apart a bit if you shake the spoon, but it sticks together pretty well, and it's a very, very wet mixture from the banana and the peanut butter and the honey. So now we're just going to put this banana, peanut butter, and oat mixture in a pan and press it down well with a spatula so that the pan is evenly filled and everything is packed as densely as possible to prepare it for baking. I've already gone ahead and greased my pan with some oil, or you could line it with some parchment paper. So here the oats are in the pan and I've just packed it down well. I've gone around the whole batch and just pressed so that everything is equally packed in the corners and along the edges. So now I'm just going to bake those at 350 for about 30 minutes. They will be browned a bit around the edges, but they shouldn't be too dark. Even if you're using a metal pan like I am, it shouldn't be too dark. My pan is 8 by 8, so I'm going to end up with some slightly thicker bars. But if you use a 9 by 9 pan, that's fine. You could use something a little bigger, like a 13 by 9, if that's all you have. You'll just end up with some thinner bars if that's the case. The thicker they are, maybe a little bit easier they are to handle, but 13 by 9 would work as well. It's not that much bigger. So while the bars are cooking, I have some nutrition information here on the right side of the screen. This is calculated based on using dark chocolate chips and a standard peanut butter. If you used an organic peanut butter or an all-natural peanut butter or other butter that doesn't have anything added and no sugars added, no oils or salt added, the nutrition would change a bit. Likewise, if you decided to use some seeds or some nuts instead of chocolate chips, you're going to see a difference in nutrition, but this gives you a general idea. Being decadent and using just a standard peanut butter, you're going to have a bit more calories and sugar and fats, but you're going to get a decent amount of fiber, as well as a decent amount of protein, and even a little calcium and iron in these bars. So it's a relatively healthy option. The main thing I would say about the sources of the fats is that they are all plant-based, but not all plant-based fats are created equal. Unsaturated fats and saturated fats from these plants, like the seeds and the olives and different things, are not all created equal, and you're going to read a lot of different things online and in different places that are going to tell you this oil is better than another one. I'm not here to tell you which oils to use or which ones are more nutritious. There's still a debate about that, actually. And I would say talk to a nutritionist or to a doctor if you're really concerned. But the main thing I would say is that if you can find cold pressed or expeller pressed oils, those are healthier than the chemically pressed oils. That is something that most people are going to agree on, because they're not going to yield the chemicals that you get from the chemically pressed oils. And they're also not going to use an unhealthy extraction process that could potentially hurt the benefits of the unsaturated fats that are in these oils, or even the saturated fats. So it's something to think about if that's something that you care about. March is National Nutrition Month. So it's a good time to be thinking about nutrition. But even if you're getting a little bit of oil in your peanut butter that isn't that great for you, or in what you use to coat your pan, it's not that much in the scheme of things. And most of the saturated fats in a peanut butter come from the peanuts themselves anyway, so really it's more about the added oils that might be used, whether they were chemically pressed or expeller pressed. So just think about whether you want added sugars, added salts, and those kinds of things, and the choice is yours. I can say one more thing about the nutrition as the bars are baking, and that is that I've given you the totals for an entire batch because you might end up with a different number of bars. The calculations for each bar are based on a 9 by 9 inch pan that you cut into 9 equal sized bars. But if you have a smaller pan and cut fewer bars, or if you have a larger pan and cut more bars, you'll need to just adjust accordingly. So just see how many bars you get and divide the whole batch by that number to figure out the nutrition per bar, if that's something that's a concern for you. The bars have been in for 30 minutes, but they're not quite done yet. I can show you. I don't know if you can see, but they're still pretty moist in the middle. You can really see the moisture hasn't not necessarily fully evaporated, but it's still pretty dark in spots where the peanut butter is. So I'm going to put them back in for a few more minutes. Once these are done, I'm going to let them cool completely, and then I will cut them into bars. And I'll leave them at room temperature for a few days. They keep perfectly fine at room temp, so it's fine to take as a snack or as part of a lunch for work or school. But longer term, I'd recommend for up to a week keeping them in the refrigerator, and then longer term, freeze them. If you freeze them in layers, put some wax paper or parchment paper in between the layers. If you've used parchment paper to bake them, you could even just reuse that paper so that you can be more economical about it. Or you can freeze them in Ziploc bags. Usually a couple of those will fit in a snack size bag, depending on how big you cut them. Or you can put a few in a larger sandwich size bag and just freeze them that way as well, so that they're not layered on top of each other, and then you don't need the wax paper. But they defrost pretty quickly. If you get them out in the morning to pack in a lunch, they'll be ready to eat for sure by lunchtime. Or you can get them out the night before if you'd like to eat them for breakfast when you first get up. They're pretty healthy. Bananas and oats both have soluble and insoluble fiber, and peanuts have fiber too. So if you're looking to boost your fiber, these are a great way to do it. If you're looking to boost your protein, like I am, because I eat a lot of plants, so I get plenty of fiber, but I don't get as much protein as someone who eats meat. These are a great way to boost protein as well. So they're a pretty tasty, but also relatively nutritious snack, as long as you don't have any allergies or sensitivities that prevent you from eating anything that's in the bars. But you can substitute, as long as you can eat bananas, you can substitute a nut butter, another nut butter or a seed butter for the peanut butter. You can skip the chocolate chips if you're allergic to chocolate, and you can use something else, and find what works for you. So my bars are ready. I don't know if you can tell the difference now, but they don't look quite as moist. And if you touch the top, it feels just a little bit crispy on top. And if you look around the edges, you'll be able to see that it's slightly browned. So that's what you want. Mine probably took a little longer because I used an 8 by 8 inch pan, and so it took 5 more minutes because the bars were a bit thicker than if I used a 9 by 9. So it took about 5 minutes more. So just keep an eye on them at about 30 minutes and see if it needs to go longer. It may, if you're using a pan like mine, or if you're using a 13 by 9, they might be ready to go at 30 minutes. I hope you enjoy the recipe, and I'll see you next time for our next food video.